Hello and welcome, listeners, back to another episode of The Whole Box. I'm back. We've been away on a little bit of a hiatus this winter. Sorry for that, but I've been away planning about what I wanted to do as we come into the spring, come into our event season. And what I really wanted to do was bring some people to you guys, the listeners, and specifically bring some vets to you guys, because hugely passionate about what I do and hugely passionate about my industry. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to chat to some vets that work in the profession, in the sports horse world. And the first person I've persuaded to come and join me in my whole box is a super vet, great guy, someone who I've got to know over a number of years and at various 3 days around Europe, is the current Irish team vet for eventing and show jumping. It's Marcus Swail. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Nice to be here. And I didn't actually know that we've probably been in the actual hold box together at some stage in the past. So I didn't realize that it would be in some kind of a virtual hold box.
This is a virtual hold box. This is. I think, actually, to memory, the last time I saw you may have been in the badminton hold box, where we both managed to extricate ourselves from, which was good news on that occasion.
Yeah, so it's a place I've found myself in a few times, and I've actually always managed to extricate myself when I think about it.
100% record. That's what we want. That's what we want on here. We got the experts. Marcus, thank you for joining me. I said to you before we started recording that what I wanted to be able to, we're going to have a chat through, listeners. We're going to talk about certain aspects of where I suppose that sort of team vet role is at the moment, and also with that sort of sports horse role. But for starters, Marcus, can you just, it'd be great to have a little bit of background. What got you into being a vet, and what sort of dragged you into the sort of sports horse world of it?
I think, like a lot of things in life, probably a series of accidents. First accident was that my father had or has real enthusiasm for horses and for show jumping, and because of that, there's three of us in the family, three boys, and two of us are quite close in age and a little older, and we were both encouraged and facilitated to become show jumpers when we were younger. So I'm the oldest, and Connor, my brother's 2 years younger than me, and he went on has gone on to make an extremely successful career out of it. He's rattling along in the top 10 in the FEI World Rankings. He's number 5 this month, and so it started there, and I was lucky enough to. We were anyone that has any dealings with ponies now will know how expensive good ponies were, and we were lucky enough that we had. I guess they were neighbours at home, really, who had a pony that was quite talented, and they were keen to get it to. Current rider had, who was the daughter, had gone out of ponies. They didn't want to sell it. They wanted to give it to somebody who they thought would look after it well. So I was lucky enough to get an extremely good pony that I was also lucky enough to win a European gold medal on in some year like 1984, which you'd want to have a good memory to remember. So, so that I suppose was a kind of a strong starting point, in that I knew by accident what it was like to be part of a team, and I knew what it was like to compete at a good level and to be a competitor. And that was actually in my first year in ponies. My second year, the first year was in Germany, the second year was in Rotterdam, and my pony went, and he was always really sound pony, but of course he went and he arrived there and he was lame, so I ended up missing out on my second European Championship, and he came sound after a few days, and I jumped in the sort of reserve end of it. So I also, I suppose, had the, you don't really realize that at the time, but that's that sort of experience is stuff maybe that you come to rely on a bit later. So that was the background. That's how I got into it. And in having ponies through the years, we always had vets in and out, and I always admired the way they went about their work and admired it as a profession. And, it was just over a period of time. I looked at it and I thought, that's a good job. I'd like to do that. So, obviously the next battle then is to try and get into college because that's no picnic. But I went to vet school in Glasgow and graduated and got going with my equine veterinary career.
When you first graduated, did you move straight back to Ireland and did you work? Were you sort of hospital based to begin with, or was it sort of straight back out on the road?
I actually I graduated in '93, and I actually took a mixed job to start with. I had this idea that it would be good for me in some shape or form, and it would be maybe make me a bit more rounded. So I actually started off working in Scotland in a really good, a mixed practice with a really good standard of work, and I used to do a bit of everything. And it was a gentleman called Andrew Miller, who was also an external examiner at the university in Glasgow for the finals. And it was great practice and a great grounding. And I was there for the most 2 years. Then I went and worked actually at the University of Glasgow veterinary practice. And that was also mixed, but I did all the horse work there. So it was becoming predominantly horse work. And then I went away to Australia and I worked there for a little while, just all horse work. And I came back to Ireland in 1998.
I worry that there's probably not that degree of sort of mixed practice work out there anymore. It's interesting that, even with that very strong equine sort of background, even before university, that you felt that a mixed practice would be very good and very rounding. And, were there particular, what gave you that idea to do that? Was it, broadening skills, or was it you just didn't feel that you wanted to specialize too quickly?
Yeah, I think probably both. I think that I think it made no difference to the eventual course of my career, and I think if I was graduating now, it's more difficult to be afforded the luxury of being able to do that. But I think being able to deal with different cases, different types of people, different animals I think it's very useful for your general skill set, and I think it's good for your life experience as well. And but probably part of the reason I done it was an idea that I had. And when you're at that age and stage of your life, I don't know how much you think about things. You just you have these ideas that you think that might be a good thing to do. So it wasn't any more simple or complicated than that.
Yeah. Just making the next what felt like the next step, next decision, onto the next thing.
And then when I came back to Ireland, it was to one of the bigger hospitals and on what we call the Curragh here, which is a big racehorse training area in Kildare. So I was an ambulatory vet there, but got dragged into lots of surgeries and different things as well. So there's a great breadth of experience there as well.
At what point did you first have the opportunity of, taking that step into, let's say, doing the team vet role, or, particularly getting back into the competition horses, the jumpers, and then the eventers?
So about 2 years after I came back to Ireland, I started doing work for the underage eventing teams, so the juniors and the young riders. And I just got asked. Again, that was an accident. I mean, I think that it was something that I was interested in, and I would like to think the standard of work that I was doing was good, and people were looking at me, the people who make those decisions were looking at me thinking that I would be a good fit for that. So I got asked to do the juniors and young riders, and then I did that until 2003, and then I got asked to do the senior team because the gent that was doing it decided that he was going to step down from it. So I did the senior eventing team in 2003, which ironically the European Championships that year was in Punchestown, which is about 15 minutes away from where I'm sitting now and about 15 minutes away from where I worked. But anyway, that was probably a good thing for your first championships. And then in 2004, the Athens Olympics was on, so I got asked, I was going there, but I got asked then to do the show jumping team while I was, not while I was there, because I was going. And Eddie Mackin was our chef to keep, our team manager, as we refer to them now at that stage. So I got asked to do the show jumping team, and then I just got dragged into all of that stuff from there on, and have been doing it with the exception of 2 or 3 years from I think maybe 14, 15 and 16. I have been doing it solidly ever since, and we've a dressage team has made an appearance now, and I've got involved with them as well in Tokyo in 2020, or when it actually happened in 2021. I've done the whole three disciplines. But I would say that as I'm getting a bit older, I am becoming some kind of a better delegator. So I'm mostly concentrating on the show jumping team at this stage, and two of my colleagues are Tim O'Hagan is looking after the eventing team, and JP King is looking after the dressage team. And again, partly by accident, but also partly because I would like to think the standard of the work that we do facilitates it, and because we're a good fit, we've actually ended up there's four of us working on the practice, and we've ended up doing all of the teamwork for all disciplines and all age groups for the Irish team. So that obviously becomes taxing time wise through the summer, but it's something that we were really. I tell everybody that will listen to me that I'm very lucky with the people that work for me. I have really great staff, and it's like trying to do two jobs at the same time through the middle of the competition season. But we're all of a similar mindset, and we all really enjoy it.
What do you think of the sort of the key skills there? You said that the work as a group of vets there, that you work to a high standard. But what are the other sort of skill sets that you think are really key to being a successful team vet?
I think that you have to have a good understanding of the discipline that you're involved with, and obviously my background in show jumping was very helpful in that, and that's reflective of the rest of the team. Tim rode to a decent level underage eventing. Seamus, one of my other colleagues, rode to a good level show jumping. So I think a good understanding of the sport is important. I think what is extremely important is, I'm not sure how well I'm going to be able to describe this. You have to have really good social skills. You have to be good at getting on with people. You have to be good at managing difficult situations, of which there are many. You have to be good at getting on well with your colleagues, because one of the attractions of the job for me, and one of the difficulties, both at the same time, are that I would be of the view that if you're going to do a job and if you're going to work with horses, you might as well work with the horses that are at the top end of the sport if you're going to do it. But that brings a considerable amount of pressure, and it brings scrutiny on every decision that you make, and it means that you are dealing with people often in high pressure scenarios, like standing in a holding box, discussing the ins and outs of whether a horse is fit to continue to compete or not with the rider there. And I think that one of the skills is to be able to communicate clearly, and to be able to manage those scenarios and those situations well under a lot of pressure.
I mean, doing the role I've got, which is doing the youth program for the British eventing for the last few years. I mean, I think, as you say, there's so much more of the role is people management and communication skills than necessarily how much of it is truly veterinary, how much actual veterinary work is involved. And I suppose that until I was sort of doing it, I didn't realize how much of that side of the job was so important until you start doing it, and and dealing with people, and as you say, dealing, often potentially giving out bad news at some of the most difficult times. That's not, they're not easy. It's not easy to.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, like the next time I have to tell someone that, because of a particular set of circumstances, an injury, whatever, that all that work that you've put in over the last 4 years to get yourself to the Olympics, well, you're not going now. That's a difficult conversation to have with anybody, but that is part of the gig, and those are the sorts of scenarios that you have to be capable of managing. But I think that, as I said, if you're going to be, I always find it really difficult when somebody asks you what the role of a team vet is. It's always really difficult to describe. So I often settle on just describing it as being a multifaceted job
with multiple skills, all of them equally important. How would you compare working with, you said, you've got your show jumping background, but do you think the team vet role for the show jumpers and the eventers is different? Can you compare and contrast that in any way?
Yeah, I think that it is different. I think eventing as a sport is more taxing on the horses, I suppose, by nature of the breadth of disciplines that they're asked to perform at a high level. So, I think, and the fact that, they're asked to gallop for 10 or 11 minutes one day, preceded by dressage, and then they're followed by show jumping. So, that's taxing on any equine athlete. And the people that are involved, interestingly, in each sport, and I'll include dressage in that one. Show jumpers are different from eventers, are different from people who do dressage, and I don't really know why that is, other than to say, I suppose, different types of people are attracted to different sports, really. And when we're talking about this multifaceted part of the job, that they need to be all managed in slightly different ways. If managed is the right word, I think that the communication, the way that you go about communicating with the different people in the different disciplines, is a bit different because they're all different type of people. And I think that sports people, as a generalization, are, they're hardy and they're competitive, and a lot of them are individually very driven. I think that the show jumpers are probably the singularly hardiest and most competitive and driven, and I'm very lucky in that I have an extremely good relationship with all the individuals that I've worked with over the years in the show jumping team. But I think it'd be fair to say that they're probably the hardest managed. I think that, as a generalization, people involved in eventing as a sport are, I would find them more, I don't know what the phrase I'm looking for. They're sort of more amenable to direction, maybe something like that. I think that I think that they're a bit different. And then dressage, people involved in the sport of dressage are different again. And I think that the horse inspections, for example, are a little different. They're possibly a little more relaxed than the show jumping side, and as a generalization, maybe outside the championships, as they should be, in my opinion, because the horses are not galloped to fatigue over 10 or 11 minutes. But I mean, it's broadly similar, but there are differences, I guess.
Would you say the role is slightly different with the eventing role, given the challenges of the 2-horse inspections and and the cross country and things like that? Are you in a position where you're being asked to have more of an opinion on on soundness, on third day soundness, or the ability to complete a competition, more so in eventing than you necessarily would get in the show jumping?
I think that's absolutely fair. I think that there's more scrutiny on that side of things in the eventing, and I think that part of this multifaceted role that I keep talking about is, like, one of the important aspects of it is advising the team manager on the soundness of the horses, if you want to call it that, and the risks associated with bringing one horse versus another. And I think that there can be often a risk versus reward thing there, where you could be looking at two horses, and one of them is likely to perform better but less likely to complete, and the other one is likely to perform not as well but much more likely to complete. And that's a scenario where the team manager will seek advice from you as to, to help them in the selection process. And I think that that comes back to that thing about you have to be confident in your own ability and clear in communicating what you think in those circumstances. So I think that that is particularly important in eventing, and that's a scenario that arises more in eventing than it does in jumping. It's much less common when you're talking about the show jumping team to be concerned about a horse maybe struggling to make it through the second horse inspection at a championship than it would be with the eventers. If that answers the question.
What are your views then on the sort of the new Olympic format for the eventers? The 3 to the team, no drop score. The way it came in Tokyo. Do you think that's highlighted that sort of your the team vet's role, your role even more so with how the questions that are asked by selectors and team managers of you? When attributing a degree of risk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I personally very much dislike that as a rule. I suppose by their nature, horse sports are, there's our mutual friend Sam Watson would tell us that, that there's a fair degree of chance in a lot of the things that happen. His data would tell us, and I think having a discard score is helpful both from the point of view of an unexpected injury to a horse, and from the point of view of, I suppose, something happening that means that you lose a horse for whatever reason. Something happened from a sports point of view, somebody falling off or whatever. So I think that if the purpose of the exercise is for the best team of 4 to win, I think having a discard score is much more likely, in my view, to find your way to that as a final result. I think that then when that is removed and you have no discard score, it certainly changes your thinking as a team vet, because that conversation that we were having before, where you're looking at 2 horses, one of them is extremely likely has an orthopedic profile or a soundness profile or a competition profile that means that it is extremely likely to finish, whereas another is more talented but perhaps can be a little more fragile. I think that it makes you much more cautious about taking a risk with the horse that maybe has issues that are a little more difficult to manage in the sport. So there's that side of it, and leaving the veterinary side of it aside, I think that it means, if I remember correctly, when we were in Tokyo, the Japanese show jumping team put a huge amount of effort into trying to find their way to a good performance, and their team fell out of bed because one of the horses nicked a hind leg in the warm-up on the wing of a fence. He spun around and just clipped it with a hind leg, and of course he started bleeding, and then he wasn't allowed to compete, and suddenly they didn't have a team anymore. So I think that you have to weigh these things up, and there's pluses and minuses, and there's probably some kind of merits in it. But if someone wants to tell me that was a fair way for that team to go out, I would have to strongly disagree with them. And I think just by the nature of the sport, having a discard score is there's a lot to be said for it.
I think I would agree as well. I think 100% agree. I think there's probably a thought process that it was sort of, whether even horse welfare was considered as part of the reason behind dropping it to 3. But I suppose I would have, from the outside, have the concerns, in the past, you just don't know, trying to get that, all 3 horses through a second trot up, if they've pulled off a shoe or they've got an overreach or things like that, that it can be, and the money that's put in, the funding that gets put into these teams and things like that, and the everything like that, it just seems like it's just a little bit too much of a roll of a dice. And I think it's for the likes of yourself, Marcus, and all the other team vets that are out there that are the absolute bastions of the horse welfare. And actually the decision ultimately comes down to you guys, much as there is a trot up and there is an FEI vet and things like that. For me, in my
Yeah,
opinion, the
well,
guys that know these horses so well, that really are the bastions and the gatekeepers of horse welfare, are the team vets, really.
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the important points that I would like to make with that is that, some people would have this idea that you have a kind of a them versus us thing going on at some of these championships, where you have the FEI vets, and they're doing the horse inspection, and they're overseeing the rules and so on, and they're coming at it from one angle, and then on the other side, here's the team vets, and in the case of individual competitors, they're private treating vets, and they're coming at it from another direction. But the reality of it is that at these championships, you have a group of colleagues, FEI vets, team vets, some treating vets, who are all, in my opinion, working together to the same end. Everybody wants the same thing. And when you're doing this job a long time, you build up a rapport with your colleagues. And when I say colleagues, I mean team vets and treating vets and your FEI colleagues. And everyone comes to realize that, and everyone, so I would like to think to get to the point that if I have a difficulty with a horse and I'm standing in a holding box, and I have an FEI colleague there, very often, whom I will have known for quite a number of years, that they will put a great deal of weight by my description of the horse and my assessment of what's going on with the horse. And I think that over a period of time, people will come to realize that you won't present a horse at a horse inspection if you think that you're in a lot of trouble with it. And you're going to often have a very reasonable conversation with your colleagues, where if there is an issue with a horse, you'll very often know what it is, and have been looking at it for a year, 2 years, 5 years sometimes, and you'll be able to communicate that to your FEI colleague. And everybody, the purpose of the exercise is not to be trying to get horses through horse inspections that shouldn't be going. The purpose of the exercise of all colleagues at these championships is to work together to the same end, and that end is for all the horses to get through and compete safely and successfully, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's really interesting in recent years, if you look at, I suppose, even the big 5-star competitions and things like that, there's people might be concerned to see that there may be a slightly higher percentage of horses withdrawn overnight before the horse inspection. But I think that's probably more of an indicator that these horses are being assessed by their own vets, in the stables, and sensible decisions are being made. And I think there's definitely, I've not been quite doing it as long as you, Marcus, but in the years I've been going to places like Badminton, sequential trot-ups and things like that, the overall soundness of the horses, there's far less unsound horses presented, I would say, now. I know that's, I can't back that up with any equirating stats, guys, but that would be my general feeling of how it is now. And I don't think it should be too alarming to see a percentage of horses withdrawn overnight. I think that just means that people are making sensible decisions rather than trying to get unsuitable horses through a trot up on a Sunday.
Couldn't agree with you more. There's nothing worse than seeing somebody presenting a horse that at a horse inspection that really shouldn't be there. And I think that was something when people were paddling their own canoe and didn't have as much veterinary help. I think that happened more often. But I think that that when people are getting better advice, that is happening much less. So I would agree, it's a positive, not a negative.
So what about the future, Marcus? What do you see the future of, let's say, it's a big, massive question, say the future of the sport, but what about the sort of the future of the sports horse vet, or of the team vet and the profession? Have you got any thoughts on the way that's going? You see it going, you see lots of good, keen young vets coming through to, take your, to jump in your shoes?
Well, I might start with the sport. I think that horse, I personally think, so I'm going to maybe even start with show jumping. I personally think that show jumping as a sport was never healthier and more vibrant, and there were never more people involved, and there was never more high profile competitions, excellent sport, people trying to find really, owners who are really engaged in the sport, trying to find really nice horses. So, on the show jumping side of things, and, I think it'd be fair to say one of the other spoke, or I tried to describe the difference between jumpers and eventers earlier, but I think that one of the striking things, the striking differences between show jumping and eventing is that, as a sport, show jumping has more interest and more money and more high profile owners. And I think that show jumping as a sport is in a really good place and is in a really healthy place, and I think eventing is too. I think that there's so many people doing it, so many people enjoying it, and why wouldn't there be? It's a great sport. They're both great sports. So I think that certainly there will be ongoing pressures about the use of horses in sport, and I think that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If people want to question whether horses should be used in sport or shouldn't be used in sport, I think that's absolutely fine and absolutely legitimate. But I think that as a profession, we should be part of that discussion, and I think that the way that I would look at it is that there are always going to be a small percentage of people who take an unreasonable view of anything. God knows I grew up in Northern Ireland, so I know that more than most people. But we'll stay away from that. That'll be a dangerous direction to be going in. But I mean, you're always going to get 10% of people, for example, in Northern Ireland, that when you're wanting to have a discussion about the Good Friday Agreement and what you're going to do next, it's actually a waste of time talking to them. And I think that is also the case when it comes to a lot of other issues, including horse sport, where I think that you're always going to have a rump of people who are what I would view as taking an entirely unreasonable and illogical view of the thing. But I think it's absolutely correct that people should be questioning the legitimacy of horse sports. But I think that rather than being led by the 10% and saying, oh, like, what are these, what are these people going to come up with next? I think what you do is you say, these sports are terrific sports. The horses, I think when you work with the horses, you come to realize that the horses really enjoy it. The people really enjoy it. And when I say the people, the riders, the owners, and the public really enjoy coming to watch it. And so I think your approach is, this is what we do and this is why we do it, and explain that it's perfectly reasonable. And I mean, the standard of care of the horses is really so good now. So personally, I think that we have to be mindful of how we manage the sports and be mindful of looking after the horses extremely well. But I think that the state of health of the sports, personally, I think is really, really good at the minute. How the standard of sport is excellent, and the numbers of people coming to view it, people are very engaged by it. So that was a bit long-winded, but
no, I couldn't agree more. We need to champion the horse, like the horse welfare angle, and the care that these, the equine athletes get. I mean, I just think there's far more pressing issues in, animal welfare than needing to worry about where, the care of these horses that are doing sport, because they're incredible athletes. They are cared for like to the nth degree. And yeah, I think that's, as you say, it's nothing wrong with asking the question, but
correct. A lot of them are so well looked after, and there are people that maybe don't. Well, sure, they probably do get mentioned as often as they should. But when you go to any of these championships and work with these horses at a high level, they will have a groom who is looking after them, and the grooms absolutely love those horses. And I mean, like, the rapport they have with the horses and the way they look after them, and it's nearly like having your own like your own PA or something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
these horses are so well looked after.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the grooms, which we always have to champion them, because I think they are, yeah, like the time and the effort and the love and the just the emotion that they put into it and the energy that they put into looking after those horses
But
is.
but they also know the horses so well. It's I was telling you about my staff earlier on. It's no coincidence that 75% of them are ex-professional grooms, because they're like I always used to say that it, like when you're looking at one of those horses and you're trying to figure out that a problem has arisen with it, when you're dealing with one of those grooms, before you even look at the horse, if you spend 5 or 10 minutes listening to them, you'll be halfway to figuring out what's wrong with the horse before you
Yeah,
start, because nobody knows those horses better than those people.
yeah, yeah. No, totally agree. Totally agree. What about the future of a little bit of the future of veterinary? What do you think? We're talking about the horse welfare there, and are there any particular developments in sort of managing these sports horses that you're seeing or you're currently using as as how we're going to step forward in that?
Well, I mean, I think as a generalization, one of the things that I've always liked about the profession is that, you didn't go to university and there is a static knowledge base which you learn. And then, once you've got to grips with that, that's all there is to know. And then you just have to lean on that for the rest of your career. One of the great things about the profession is that it's constantly evolving with new information. So I don't know if it's a good example or not, but I mean, when I was in university, like with that background I had in riding ponies, there was this great thing called navicular disease and so on. And like it was sort of like a mystery word that when a horse started to get foot pain in front, it had navicular. And I can remember coming to that module in the equine part of my training in university and thinking this would be great now to understand it. And then when I understood everything that there was to understand about it at that time, I wasn't sure that I knew much more. And that was because we were very limited. We had a good understanding of where the discomfort was, but we didn't have the tools to be able to figure it out at that particular time. And like that's however long ago that is, like early 90s. So since then we've developed new tools to be able to interrogate horses' feet much better, MRI in particular. And then suddenly you find yourself moving from a position where a horse has foot pain, probably a lot of them have navicular bone pain, but there's an element of not completely understanding it. To it's almost like somebody lifts the blinds and you can
Yeah,
see everything. So now we know that some of those horses do have navicular bone pain, but some of them have injured their deep flexor tendon, some of them have coffin joint pain, some of them have injured their collateral ligaments of their coffin joint, their impar ligament. So as a profession, there is one of the things that keeps you at it and keeps you excited is that there are so many bright, energetic, talented people who are figuring out new things all the time. So I mean, you've got intelligent people with curious minds at the forefront of the profession, and we are then also constantly evolving new techniques. I think the way imaging has evolved over the last 20 years and is continuing to evolve. CT is becoming more common now. We've got PET knocking around in the background. I think that's one of the great things about the profession is that there are constantly new things to understand and to learn all the time. So I think that's from the point of view of the future of the profession. I think that will absolutely continue. It has always been so, and it always will be. One of the other things that's kind of interesting now is objective gait analysis, and that's something that I've been interested in for about 10 years. The ability to objectively measure asymmetry in horses, or asymmetry in gait or lameness, I suppose, if you want to there's certainly some overlap with that. I think that's really interesting. And there's an app that by an accident that happened when I was at the Tokyo Olympics in 21, I became involved with, and it's a really nice and a really nice system that evaluates the symmetry of the horse just from the video of the horse trotting. There are no sensors, and it's really simple and really accurate. So that's, I don't know if you want to focus on that in particular, but I mean that's an illustration of the type
I'm
of
fascinated.
things
I personally invested far too much. Well, far too much money. I invested a lot of money in a sensor-based system this winter because I'd be the same as you with that. What you were saying about that objective gait analysis, because I love to try and be able to put numbers to something, or put rather than that sort of, oh, it's okay for him, the way he trot up, or he's always moved it a bit like that, and if you're looking for 20% deterioration in this or that, try and be a bit more preventative before they've overloaded and I'm getting the scanner out and they've got black holes in their tendons, things like that. But it is something that it piques my interest as well. So I thought the listeners might be interested in in that app you were talking about.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think gait analysis as a generalization is, I mean, all I do all day, every day is look at lame horses or horses that have performance loss issues that are thought to be possibly orthopedic, or you can get into talking about horses' stomachs, ovaries, and a bunch of other things as well. But I spend a lot of time looking at horses from an orthopedic perspective, and that also, I suppose, feeds in from the point of view of pre-purchase exams as well, which is a substantial part of it is an orthopedic assessment. So I think that a way of taking the subjectivity out of it has always been very attractive to me. Not taking it out of it is the wrong phrase. Having a subjective measurement to go along with your clinical impression is probably a better way of putting it. So I've been looking at these gait analysis systems, and I'm a simple person who likes simple things, and I really like the idea of the sensor-based ones. Then there are these other ones that have a multi-camera, so you'll have a large room or a barn or whatever, and you'll have 16 cameras around it, and you'll attach reflective markers to the horses, and it'll give you this sort of 3D picture. It's a system called a Qualisys system. So these all really interested me, but I was just looking at them thinking, like, I really like the idea of this objective gait analysis, but like, I know that I'm too busy to be starting to put these sensors or these reflective markers and cameras and then hooking up things by Bluetooth and so on. Like, I'll use it, but not as much as I should. So this system that I use now, it's called Sleip, SLEIP, and the name even itself is interesting. So the Sleipnir it's a Swedish development, and the Sleipnir was some kind of a mad animal in Norse mythology that had like 5 legs or 8 legs or something like that. It was like a horse with 8 legs. So it's quite a sort of an appropriate name for the app. But without going on too much about it, it's really simple. You pop your camera into a tripod and you video the horse, and it's the first venture of the dreaded artificial intelligence into our profession, I would suggest, in that it's an AI algorithm that assesses the symmetry of movement of the horse, and they've gone on to develop it to be able to assess the horse in a circle, and they're just working on it at the moment to assess the horse ridden. And I also joke that one of the things that I like about it is that it always agrees with me. So when I see a little bit of an improvement after a block, it does as well, or when I see a big improvement, it does as well. So it almost invariably agrees with me, and that's a subject for another podcast, which I'm not sure whenever they're going to agree with me all the time. But anyway.
We like things that agree with us. If we found something that disagreed with us, I think I'd be less keen on it.
I think all joking aside, something that is, you're seeing one thing and it's providing you with information that doesn't make any sense to you. I think I think that's something that is very difficult to have, to have faith in. Whereas one of the things that I like about this is that it is, it's extremely consistent in the information that it gives you. Might not exactly agree with you all the time, but it's extremely consistent in the information being logical, presented in a logical way, and being consistent with your clinical impression of the horse. And I think that one of the important things and maybe we'll finish on this with regard to this subject. One of the important things about objective gait analysis is it's not something that makes decisions for you. It's a piece of information in the same way that an ultrasound gives you a piece of information, and an X-ray gives you a piece of information. It's a piece of information to help you in your decision making. It doesn't make decisions for you. And as a generalization, the more pieces of good information that you can put together when you're working up a case on a horse, particularly a difficult case, the more pieces of good information that you can get, the more likely you are to come up with a good diagnosis in the end.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think it's all another tool in the armory of, helping us. I think also helping us when we're out on the road and we've got, clients with us and, the riders and the owners looking at horses. It's, I think it's something that helps us as an ambulatory vet where, they're looking at the same time and, to their eye, they're looking at, we're looking for subtle changes in the, in that, where I use the sensor-based system, but, it helps you with that, and you can say that you're admittedly bringing a computer into the conversation, but it's about saying, look, you might not think that it looks particularly different to your eye, but there's a significant, difference in these markers. And I think, as you say, it gets us, anything that helps us get a more accurate diagnosis has got to be good for horse welfare.
Yeah.
So
I think the other thing from a welfare point of view as well that is really helpful is it allows you to build up a picture of a horse over a period of time. Yeah. So you can build up a data set of a horse. You can record it today, record it again in 2 weeks, record it again in a month, record it every month after that, and then if say for the sake of argument, a horse has been going really well and then suddenly, loses its way a bit and, has if it's an eventer, it has a couple of bad runs and everyone's scratching their head, or if it's a jumper, it's starting to struggle with performance and form, then it's really easy. You can say, okay, let's take it out and let's collect the data on it today and see if that's, if there's something new or something that diverges from, what was normal for this horse. So, you like to think that it would be able to help you and the horse from that point of view, or, maybe even to head off something small that's starting to appear before it becomes something big.
Yeah. There we go, listeners. There we are. There's a future of veterinary with our artificial intelligence coming in. There's our sidekicks to help us out with looking after the horses that are out there. Marcus, I'm going to just wrap this up. It's been brilliant. Really appreciate your take on it, and all those, everything that we've talked about. I'm going to end by just saying, let's say we got some young aspiring vets listening to the podcast. What advice would you have for anyone who's aspiring to be a vet in the future?
I mean, I think that it's a great profession, and I've been lucky over my career to have met so many good people who do this job, and I think that you find yourself often surrounded by really good people. So I think it's an excellent profession, but I also think it's a profession you need to go into with your eyes open, in that I would describe it as not so much of a job as a way of life, to be honest with you, in that, it's, in my view, to do the job well and to do the job properly, I think that it needs to be almost like a way of life. Really, it doesn't fit well into that sort of 9 to 5 category. So it's a great job, but go into it with your eyes open.
Yeah, and what's probably similar advice to young vets, let's say, or vet students, things like that. That the fact that there is a degree of sacrifice. There is a degree of sort of personal sacrifice, isn't there?
There is, but for people who are who are young and already starting to do the job. I mean, I think that some of the things that I was saying before. I'll always be curious. Always be interested in developing yourself professionally. Always understand that you might think that you know a lot, but actually, the more time goes on, the more you realize how little you know. And I had a he was an elderly colleague at that time, but he's retired now, professor in the veterinary college in UCD here, called Brendan Glazier, and he's a cardiologist. And we used to get him down when I was working in that first hospital that I came back home to when I first came back to Ireland. We used to bring him down to do the tricky cardiology cases, of which there were many, particularly in the racehorses there. And I had a pre-purchase exam, and I can't even remember the details of it, Spike, but it had some kind of mad thing that I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I got it in for the next day that Brendan Glazier was coming down. And of course, he looked at it, and straight away he knew what was wrong with it. And, within 5 minutes, he had it all figured out, and he explained it to me and so on. And I said to him, it must be great to have the amount of experience that you have, and to have seen all these things before, and to have that mileage where you can look at something that's really unusual and a bit off the beaten track, and I'll know what it is straight away. And he said to me, Marcus, I'll tell you the way it is. If you could take what you learned in this lifetime and then put another career's worth, another lifetime's worth of knowledge on top of that, then you might know something. And I think that's young people who are starting off in the profession. I think that it would serve them well to remember that. I think there's so many ways that you can develop yourself in the profession, and it's continues to develop all the time. And you need to work hard at your development, and you need to be resilient. That's the other thing. A lot of people won't want to hear this, but almost without exception, all of the people who are good at this job and who stick at it at a very high level over a very long period of time, they are all resilient people. So I think that I don't know, there's nothing in this, nobody hands you anything in this life, you have to work for it. So I think that it's a great job, and it is extremely rewarding, but it's no picnic, and you have to keep at it.
Well, there we go, listeners. I think that's a very, very appropriate summary for vets, for veterinary profession, and hopefully people have got an insight into the challenges that the veterinary profession have, and maybe a little bit of what the future holds. But Marcus, you're a star. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving up an evening for us, for the listeners. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Listeners, feedback. I'd love to get some feedback. Any other, future ideas for Holdbox? I'm keen. My plan at the moment is to do some more with some more vets, people that have been, in and around the sports horse industry, and I think it'd be just a nice insight to the challenges that are out there, and how the work that's being done to manage horses and ensure high levels of horse welfare. So once again, Marcus, thank you for your time. I hope you have a successful season.
Thanks, Spike. It's my pleasure, and it's been really enjoyable talking to you, and I look forward to seeing you the next time, and we'll try and make it outside the holding box rather than in it if we can.
We'll sneak out of the holding box and maybe have a quick beer somewhere.
Yeah, couldn't be better. Okay, mate.
Grand job. Marcus, thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you, listeners, and we'll catch you again on another Holdbox.